How you doing today? I'm Shawn Childs, fantasy high stakes fantasy baseball and football analyst. Now on Fantasy on SI. Just been working on baseball for 2 months and just spent 4 days working on the projections. So I just wanted to talk about the projections a little bit because they're not the they're just trying to give people perspective of what players should do. My projections are a little more bold than some of the other standard projections that people use because I'm doing them in as in the team aspect, who's going to be in the starting lineup and the playing time, and I'll get to that in 1 second. But the basis of projections is I use a fantasy points gain score, which is different than anybody else. It gives me a way to rank players against other players at other positions and hitters against pitchers, and then we can kind of try to see where they're going in drafts and see if we can find some values and stuff like that. So I'm going to bring up the spreadsheet and talk about a couple of quick things, and I don't want to get long-winded and boring about this, but up on the right hand side here, this is what the average hitter last year. So if you were in a 12-team league in the middle of in there's say 2,000 teams, the team that came in 1,000th place in runs, batting average, steals, home runs, and RBIs, they hit 251.8. They hit about 73, 74 home runs, 73 to 74 runs, 20 home runs, about 71 RBIs, and 12.36 steals. So if you see that player and you got 14 of those, you would have finished middle of the pack in the contest. You're 14 players times 20 home runs is 280 home runs in a 12-team format. You're going to need more than that. You're going to need more than all the other thing. I think 10. That's probably 114. It's 168 steals. With the 12 steals. So you needed 202 and to be in the top 20% or something. So it gives you a baseline of what you're looking for a player, and the goal is to build your team and you have some advantages at some positions, and at the same time you don't want to get too much beat too bad at the back end of the other positions. And at the same time, I gave you auction values, and I can adjust this. Unfortunately, I don't have the mechanics to allow you to do it right now, but it's basically on basically 180-80 split. So 80 for pitching and 180 for hitting. If I change it, I'm not going to do it right in the number. It'll change the values, and that's a whole different ball game. So anyways, so I did the projections. They came out. I did all 30 teams, and a lot of things are work in progress. But the main thing is to get the skill sets right, put the games in range of what they've done in the past. If somebody's missed 20 or 30 games and they're a veteran player, I kind of want to put in somewhat in that range. If just for playing time, if they hit third in the batting order, and I want to put them there. So all I have to do, if somebody gets hurt, just for example, if Bobby Witt got hurt and he was going to miss 25 games, all I have to do is take off 25 games off of his projections, and that would correct it out. At the same time, if somebody's going to say they're going to bat leadoff, and I have them eighth, all I have to do is switch them to leadoff, and take and move somebody else down, and then it'll do that. So, and I'll go over to that for 1 second. So like if somebody's batting leadoff, they get 12.2% of the plate appearances, and if somebody's batting ninth, it's just under 10%, and it trickles down at each position. It's a rough estimate. It'll change a little bit from each team, and the bench players, I gave them the 7th slot in the batting order. And some of these players, even though you're saying they're going to bat leadoff, they're not going to bat there the whole year. So a guy might bat leadoff, 65% of the time, and eighth, whatever. So I don't have that mechanic to guess on that stuff. So somebody, if I think they're going to bat leadoff and get a lot of playing time, they're going to get rewarded. If they're going to play 120 games at leadoff or whatever position I put them in, it won't be that far off and stuff like that. So, but before I go to that, I just want to talk about the top 10. So, when I'm doing each team profile, it's who's on the team, and the way I do the projections, it has the RBI rates are a skill that they have, and it's also if you get a say last year the Dodgers got Ohtani, and you put him in front of Betts or Freeman, he's going to get on base a lot more. That's going to create raise the RBI rate or potential for maybe Betts and Freeman after good years. So that could potentially be a couple percentage points. But a guy that's an average RBI guy is about 15%. Like a leadoff, not much power, whatever, would be 12%, 11%. Really a weak hitting player. Elite player would be over 20% home runs. So some of these things, I did a formula a long time ago, and I couldn't explain what it is. I know I could work through it and do it. But if the next guy is hitting behind you in the lineup, the guy that's one above you in the lineup, I should say, that guy's going to come on base. He's going to be on base. Like if he gets a hit 98.5% of the time, sometimes he's going to stretch a play into a double. Sometimes a runner is going to get thrown out at the plate, but and it trickles down through all 5 positions. So you can, if the bases are loaded and there's 2 outs and all that other stuff, but that's another story. But anyways, so the RBI rates are created by their offense, and the run rate is a personal skill for a player, and it's kind of reflective of their home runs and what they've done in the past. And if you get on base more and you get on base 250 times and you score 80 runs, it's going to come out to a certain number, and you have a little history, so you try to put it in tight range there. So I'm going to get too complicated on that. But anyway, so when the players came out as projections, there's some positions that you'll look at them like, wow, that's, that guy's really, really high, that guy's too low. And I'm not trying to say that I'm like that player more. I'm going to take a couple of positions, and I'm going to talk about one for sure. Pete Alonso is pretty high up here, and that's more of a I think he's a good power hitter, undervalued a little bit. His batting average, I have him at 251, but the opportunity to hit behind Lindor and Soto is going to create so many RBI chances that he is going to, a couple years ago, I think he had 130 RBI. So I have him projected for 127. I think that's the highest out of anybody. So to me, it's a great opportunity. It kind of really shines through in the way I do projections. But is he capable of hitting 43 home runs? Absolutely. He's done it in the past. Is he going to hit 251? He does. His strikeout rate's not really that far out of line. He's, 23, 24%, but he's been under 20%. If his strikeout rate goes down, his batting average could go up. And then the same thing, I use the contact batting average that I talk about if you follow me on my site, that helps if somebody's, hits well over 400, they can offset some of their strikeout risk. So anyway, so like Alonso came up high. Abrams, I probably took a position that, he stole bases 2 years ago. He had close, I think, 20 home runs last year, gave him a couple more. They said he was stronger. The package just, I gave him a rebound in stolen bases a little bit. So it just kind of came out right. And I had Gunnar Henderson initially too low, and I had to double check that. So I had to correct that. So it's easily, once in a while I'll have a decimal point off or something. And, when I'm dealing with a lot of numbers. So, I ran a double check, and I think I got everybody in the starting point. So, but I'm going to just, rather than go talk about whatever, but if you see somebody in projections, you're going to say, do I believe these projections? If I have them projected for a certain number of games, if the guy's for 137 games, like Tatis, he's 137 games. If he plays 155, he's going to naturally go up a lot higher, but he's had an injury history. So he's one like in the top 10, 12 hitter, and that's below. Even, Rodon Alvarez is pretty high. He's missed some time, but Freddie Freeman's a guy that's played 162 games, like 2 years in a row. I gave him 10 missed games. He's coming off that ankle. I figured maybe they'll rest him a little bit. Just, but that extra 10 games he plays, it's, 60 more at bats, or not 60 more at bats, but 40 more at bats or something like that, and more opportunities. But, all those little numbers, add up. Somebody gets hurt, and, stuff that, you're looking at. So I'm just going to go quick here. I'm going to buzz through some of these teams. If I see something that kind of stood out, Jackson Holiday for the Orioles, I switched over here. He's got the skill set, and I really kind of looked at him dig hard. I think he would be a pretty good value, and I really think that, the walk rate in the minors and stuff like that was there, and he has the skill set to bat leadoff. I'm just not sure that his contact batting average is going to be high enough out of the gate. So, but I put him as the leadoff swing because spot. It was him or Mullins, and that might flip-flop a little bit, and even as the season goes on, if Holiday can seize the job, play better. The middle lineup looks kind of the same. I put Gunnar Henderson hitting third. I think most places had him hitting second, but I wanted to get Holiday up there, so that could change. Rochman's going to be up there a lot. So the back of the lineup for the Orioles is interesting because Tyler O'Neill adds more power, but he misses a lot of time. So I have him, missing 118 games. That's well below what his projection will be lower because of that. Ryan O'Neill is a guy that kind of emerged last year. He's got his approach under control. And he looks like it's repeatable a little bit. So he's going to get on the field. And Jordan Westbrook is a guy that everybody likes that could kind of break out. I didn't give him, 147 starts, gave him 135. A little bit more might help him. I don't think he's going to run a ton, get some stolen bases. So my numbers don't come up as high as him. And Kobe Mayo is a guy that's going to work his way into the conversation, potentially at first base, DH, or something like that. In the back of the infield, I guess Heston Kjerstad is a guy that could emerge. And I probably have him not enough at bats. And that is he reflective of the DH spot of Ryan O'Hearn, or is he going to be, O'Neill gets hurt? I think Colton Cowser is worthy of a pretty good opportunity. He hits for high batting average and he puts the ball in play, played pretty well. We'll see right there. And just, there's some fillers there, but, Jackson Holiday is probably the key where he hits in the lineup. Is he going to be good enough to be a fantasy value? He could be a lot better. Some of the stuff didn't really line up for, didn't hit a lot of, fly ball rate was kind of low there. So it is what it is. I put Bregman batting second, Devers, Story kind of rotated the lefty righty thing a little bit. I think the Red Sox are going to make a trade there. The back of the lineup, they want that Kristen Campbell to play. Roman Anthony is a pretty talented player. They could get in there. Vaughn Grissom, looked like he got stronger, but I think he's going to end up. If the Red Sox are, probably not happy with how he did last year and the way they're, the Campbell emerged and stuff like that, I think that he could be in the package that gets traded to somebody else with maybe Tristan Casas or whatever they're going to do it. They created that, by getting Bregman, that the dilemma at third base, which reflects on first base and DH. So pretty straightforward on the Red Sox. Trevor Story, guy just stands out as that, if he could stay on the field for 135 games, he would be a pretty good value for what his skill set is, and he missed time. And I really like what David Hamilton did last year. He'd be kind of a, infielder, outfielder, utility type of guy, and he could be helpful. But if you got somebody especially gets hurt, I think they want to move Yoshida too, so that could be interesting. Move down to the Yankees. Put Chisholm. That's what I got Chisholm fifth. That's kind of a strange, because I think Bellinger, they're pretty committed. I mean, not Bellinger, Judge. So I don't know if Chisholm has the strong enough approach to bat third or fourth. I know Bellinger's done it before, and Goldschmidt's been pretty good. So Chisholm's kind of the wild card. I put Volpe leading off for the speed. And Stanton's going to miss some games. Austin Wells is a player improved. I think they're going to probably try to do something with LeMahieu. Dominguez, Jason Dominguez is the guy that's, really intriguing. I gave him 127 games. The speed lines up. I'm not sure of if the power will be there and if they're going to move him high enough. So, I think Volpe's got a little more time, kind of can run, has got the power, got a little bit better, not quite there yet. So that will be kind of could flip-flop back and forth. Or if they want to move Chisholm higher, I don't think they're going to Judge lead off. I mean, so it's kind of messy in there, and I probably might not have that right. Like I said, all I have to do is change these numbers and whatever. And I think, the Ben Rice I threw, he did all right last year, but they talked about Dominic Smith a little bit. As far as the Tampa Bay, Junior Caminero is a guy that everybody kind of liked coming into this year. And when I wrote about him, I kind of compared him to Alex Bregman as far as if he delivered the stats of Bregman did last year, like, they say 80 runs, 25 home runs, and 80 RBIs, and whatever for batting average 260, then he would be a top 60 hitter drafted. So a top 60 hitter, where is that? Is that a top 100 player? So, but I couldn't really give him I didn't really put the stamp on him in contact batting average because he has to kind of prove himself there. So that really kind of reflective of his batting average. I have it at 259. He can hit a lot higher. His home runs could be a lot more. But at the same time, I got him for 138 games. He has to prove himself that he can stay on the field. And I'm not sure, I'm not going to put my stamp on him. I need to see that. Jimenez, I gave him the DH spot. Looks like he lost some weight. I'm not sure if that's, kind of tricky there. Josh Lowe, I think he's, played well 2 years ago. Going to probably sit against some lefties. That ballpark's going to help him. And I think that he kind of jumped off the page a little bit. That as a value because he's pretty successful in the base pass and fast, and he can hit 20 home runs, and so I think he came out pretty good. Christopher Morel is a guy with a lot of power. The batting average risk was real last year. A little bounce back for me there, but still, the guy that really is going to stand out when I did the Tampa Bay projections is Danny Jansen. I looked at it, it's like 25 home runs, really? And then I looked at it, and he's got that massive fly ball rate, 51%. So that's really really helps his home run power. And in the past, when he was in Toronto, they was always splitting time, and I gave him 445 at bats. He was a guy that was getting like 280, 300 and hitting 16, 17 home runs. So he's a batting average risk there, but if he stays in the lineup for 450 at bats, I mean, he has a chance to hit close to 25 home runs. So I thought, as a cheap catcher, that's reasonable. Curtis Mead got a little stronger, they said. Aranda people like, I'm not sure there. But so that's the back end, and Kim's gonna look like Kim's gonna miss a couple months. Bo Bichette, I mean, you give him a pass, you don't give him a pass, and even when his stats are okay, 8 steals, 20 home runs, it's not gonna, it's not crazy good, and batting average is fine, and he's scoring 92 runs, could be better than that, so 9th round pick, I think it makes sense, and there could be more in a contract year. I've drafted him a couple times, but it's like, I don't know, you can get a better shortstop. And yeah, I know he has the potential because he's been a pretty good player when healthy, but he's coming off one dog year. Santander gets a little bump, going to the middle of this lineup, not the ballpark, doesn't help. Dalton Varshaw's coming off injury. I think Jimenez is a guy that kind of falls in a range where I think he's average hit rate for me is, it's better than what people think. So I think there's a rebound in power there. And I think even 14 home runs for me is kind of light there. The back end of the lineup is really kind of messy for me. A bunch of guys in the outfield and whatever. There's like 6 guys there that are not really that good. So that could change and it'd be in flux there. Chicago White Sox, I think Benintendi got a little banged up and missed some time. I got to probably maybe correct that. But, Luis Robert is a really talented player that's really underachieved. Kenny, he goes in a pretty fair place in drafts. He could steal, he could hit 30 home runs and steal 20-something bases. I think he had 38 home runs a couple years ago. I only have him for 20, so I think I'm light there. But I got him missing, 133 games, so he's got missing some time, so that could be a little bit higher. Even the steals aren't crazy good, but people thought he was a 30-30 player. I think Andrew Vaughn could improve a little bit. Vargas, a guy just like the talent, didn't really show it last year. They need to have somebody that lead off. He does take some walks. I'm not sure that he's gonna hit the ground running or whatever, but I was willing to put the stamp there. He's another guy that said he got stronger over the winter, had a couple good seasons in the minors for the Dodgers, so kind of liked him. He goes, so I'm interested for sure. The back end there, same thing. Lineup's nothing really crazy there. Brandon Drury signed, and who plays second base, third base over there is going to be kind of tricky. Josh Rojas, they from Seattle or played last year, so not really there. And they have another young catcher there. Thing. So as far as Cleveland, Quan hit 14 home runs last year. I dropped it down a little bit. The other numbers didn't line up. So, who's going to hit second? Is Jose Ramirez could move up. Manzardo is a guy that I gave the opportunity, 136 games. Lane Thomas was pretty good for Washington. It really kind of faded off with Cleveland last year. They got Carlos Santana, just a steady guy, nothing too exciting. That Chase DeLauder guy, I'm not sure I'm saying that right. He looks like a pretty talented big guy, and he's going to kind of develop and have power. I gave him 98 games. That was pretty fair, I thought. Could come quicker. Just got to get that, his strikeout rates. What do you at? Strikeout rates, 18. And it's actually not that bad. Sorry, I'm trying to cross over and look at this thing, the numbers, to make sure I'm on the right column here. So strikeout rate wasn't bad that I have that lined up for. So just to need a little more experience. Josh Naylor is a guy that can improve. The back end, same thing. There's no, the Noel guy for Cleveland last year showed some power, and it's going to be somewhat of a split. I should probably have him up there in the sixth in the starting lineup because they'll probably have it out of the gate. So there's a little, couple of young players there. Parker Meadows, not sure. there. Torres coming off, a couple down, a down year for sure, underachiever, going to be a free agent next year, gets an opportunity. Really kind of messed up the structure of this team because now, most people have Turkelson not even on the roster, and he hit 30 home runs 2 years ago. He was a complete bum last year, but moving Keith over to first base and qualifying at second's interesting, because you can play him at second base, and I think he has eventually 30 home run potential. And they got Jace Jung, who's going to be in the mix. And so that really that second base, first base is kind of messy. I put Turkelson in there, and Javi Baez. What do you do with him? Big contract. Get rid of him. Does he come back? I only gave him 81 games. Could play more. Kerry Carpenter is the guy that people like. 30 home runs. I'm pretty bullish on him. Going to get a little more playing time against lefties, and that's kind of a good sign. But he's a guy that's missed some time in the past. And Riley Green, I think I liked him in some drafts. Steady. I think he can improve, and he's a pretty good player. And Parker Meadows, I don't, like I said, I mentioned earlier, I'm just not sure that he could. I got 131 games, so it's not that he's going to miss some time. Kansas City with India, signing, I think gives him a kind of a legit leadoff guy, and you're going to move him around in the infield. Give somebody hitting one off a star player is pretty important to me when I'm doing some of this stuff. India hitting in front of Witt. I guess Garcia could have that at some point. Mikhail Garcia could have it at some point. That would be kind of help his value. But for now, India seems like he's got the more experience. Played pretty well last year, even though he didn't get a ton of he got plenty of bats, but he could have had more games and stuff like that. And he had a couple of years ago in his rookie season, he was really, really good. So I think that fits in front of Bobby Witt. I think the same thing, Pasquantino, people are down on him a little bit. His RBIs were good last year, missed the last month. I think he's kind of untapped where he could hit for a lot of higher average. I got him at 280, which is probably above what he's done. Salvador Perez is just, a guy that just hits home runs and just doesn't score runs. He's too slow. So he kind of drags you there. So 59 is a pretty good number there. He could hit more home runs. Yeah, good RBI guy. Just a veteran catcher. Melendez trying to fix his swing. Massey's going to same thing, split time with India, but I think he's a better second baseman. He could bounce him around a little bit. So nothing really the back end there of like some young player that's going to stand out. The Twins, I didn't know who, I put the Brooks Lee. He seemed like he had the best skill set to bat leadoff. Royce Lewis, good player. Just can he stay healthy? Correa, people are going to take him. I think he's a value there. He's a good player. Just hasn't really, same thing, 137 games, hasn't been elite. Buxton missed a lot of games, gave him 115 if he ever could stay for 145 games. Pretty impressive. And Matt Wallner, a ton of power, strikes out a lot, but probably going to be in the middle of the lineup. Jose Moran has been steady a couple of years ago and up and down and disappointed at times, but I think there is potential. So, but nothing to really that's, it's just mixing up the playing time. And I put Mike Ford as the extra first baseman and look through their minors, not much there. As far as, Houston, pretty straightforward on their main core of players. The Paradis guy, Isaac Paradis, he could hit second. His walk rate was there, so I thought that was decent compared to what I tried to force Pena in there, and I don't know if he took enough walks. Pena could get better. He's a lot stronger guy, but I mean, to hit 13 home runs feels like a disappointment because he's kind of a really strong kid, and he just isn't there. So his home run total isn't reflective of his potential. They signed it Brandon Rogers. Mix it up. The back end, the same thing. There's nothing really that jumps off at the back end of there. The other player, when I got it here, when I did the projections, had Mike Trout, 36 home runs, 131 games. I mean, got him missing 31 games. What do you do with Mike Trout? He's like a pretty good value in drafts. Do you take him? I think it really makes sense in a 12-teamer. You can take him, or even a 10-teamer, because your replacement value is so much better in the player pool. And at the same time is like, who's to say Trout doesn't play well for 3 months, 4 months, and then gets hurt. We don't know for sure. Really talented player. And I was hoping that he actually would be more of a DH than a right fielder this year. That would be helpful. Nolan Schanuel is a player I liked. Yes, last year he didn't reach my expectations in some things, but I think he's going to be closer. I think he's helpful, but he's not. He has to really fit the right team structure at the back end at first base. He'll score some runs. The batting average come up there, but the home runs, he just doesn't hit the ball hard enough. He will get better at that. And he will, when he can hit some home runs, but he just, those hard hit rates aren't there, and he'll steal some bases for some bases for a first baseman, which is kind of helpful. Odell played pretty good for stretch last year, even though he strike out a lot. Low batting average still there, but he will run. I like the Logan Hoppy a lot. Travis DiNarno is somewhat of a factor, caps some of the things there, but potential at bats. Jan Makata, and is he ever going to do anything? Just never ran, whatever. Scott Kingery was a guy that was interesting because people liked him a long time ago, and he's on the team, and they gave him enough of a contract where I think he's going to make it. Tim Anderson, who knows? He could make the roster or whatever. So that back end's kind of messy there. And when I was doing the A's, I really had to double take and look at Soderstrom because he gets drafted in the top 300 in the NFBC. And, I like him as a player, and he could bat clean up, and it makes sense. But, is he really going to be a guy that's worth, can he be a 20-80 guy? And I'm not sure if that's out of the gate, but 131 games, that's a pretty strong bet on him. Brent Rooker coming off a great year, 41 home runs, really kind of played above the skill set for me, but they paid him enough money, so it's guaranteed that he's going to be in the lineup. I only gave him 142 games. He missed a little bit with a oblique injury last year. I think he's going to need to prove that he can stay on the field for 155. So there was a little more room for upside there. He just, the home run rate's there, the average hit rate's there, even hits for high contact batting average. It's just where his strikeouts fall. I got him at 31% strikeout rate. It's pretty high. That can lead to slumps. Zach Geloff struck out a ton last year, but he's still a guy that's capable of being like a close to a 20-20 player. And he can improve and cut those strikeouts. I really had to dig down on Butler. He gets drafted pretty early. I thought his strikeouts were going to be a problem last year, but he looked like he got sent down. He got better. Can he hold that thought process this year? I'm not sure, but I really double checked and looked at his AAA numbers. Strikeout records were a lot better than AA, but still in the back burner. But he looked like he got better. You got to give the guy credit for what he's done, and hopefully he can build off of that. Back of the lineup, nothing really there. I think I went against the grain here on Seattle, everybody, Victor Robles batting leadoff and stuff like that, and he's a pretty popular player. But I'm just not sure that his skill set's good enough to keep that job. I only gave him 121 games. The walk rate's not there for me to bat leadoff, around 7% for me. And I know Crawford takes more walks, 12% walk rate. It's better. I moved a Rosarina up, Rodriguez down. They got the middle lineup's just kind of like really messy. They got Talese there against get some bats. Hanniger really just didn't do it. Kind of thing. Luke Riley strikes out too much. He'll have some power and have some good games. Polanco struck out too much. Really messy there. Tyler Locklear has some talent, could emerge at some point, but not really. A lot there. Rally's a guy. Cal Raleigh is a player that just hits a ton of home runs, and he just seems like he belongs there, but he still has that batting average risk there. So Texas, everybody's kind of down on Simeon. I don't think he did anything special here. 255. The thing that's the advantage for him, he plays in a really good lineup. If Texas can do what they did a couple years ago, and he gets a lot of at bats. So I got him 148 games, but he's been like a league leader in at bats and plate appearances a lot. So I have some priced in there. Seager's another guy that's just could be a complete monster, but 134 games, got a missing 20 or sitting for 28 games. So if he played for 155 games, he could hit 40 home runs, and he could be kind of special, and he could hit for a lot higher batting average and stuff like that. Wyatt Langford, he's got a little oblique issue. Is he real? Going to be a stud? I mean, I gave him 30 home runs, 24 stolen bases. He still has to show it. But he has the talent. He's one of those guys that when you're looking at the young players, like some players, like a guy like Butler and Merrill and the guy from Cheerio from Milwaukee, where are those players going to be future first rounders? And I think Langford is going to be, a guy that's going to be a first rounder. So the potential is there. I guess the September finish, when I think he had 8 home runs, 7 steals, will really put a stamp on it. His sprint speed really, really good. So I think that's a good number there. So, when I'm looking at that stuff, I think he's fair. I mean, he's a guy that can break out. He's going to bat third, or middle of this lineup somewhere. He just needs to stay on the field. Same thing. I gave him 141 games, a little bit more, and he missed like 3.5 weeks last year. So he did miss some time, and he's got a little oblique thing. Like, man, is this guy going to? Hopefully, he's not going to be a guy that gets nicked up a little bit. So, but we'll see. Jock Peterson's a guy I put him in a little middle of this lineup, more of a righty lefty switch. Berger's got power. People like him. I think he's going to hit down the lineup, but better ballpark, better lineup than Miami for sure. Josh Jung's, the guy just, he's been snake bit with injuries, had a lot of talent. Heim had a ton of RBIs a couple of years ago. Really thought like I'd like Evan Carter a little bit more, but it is kind of messy with him and Tavares in the outfield. And, Carter has the talent to be a lot better, but he's going to have to start, I think, at the bottom of the lineup and kind of work his way into a better position. Need an injury. This lineup looks a little bit different than it did a couple of years ago when they were playing Carter higher up there, but we'll see. So I think Carter should be the better option in center field, but he did have a back injury, and we'll see what happens there. Ronald Acuna, he's going to miss probably a month. When he had an injury a couple of years ago coming off a torn ACL, he just wasn't as explosive. So 25 home runs, 30 stolen bases. Got 101 runs. You give him a lot of credit for the guy. That's 509 at bats, missing 30 games. He could play a little bit more than that if he comes back. But he should be. I think it's 9 months. Is usually that recovery time for something like that. Maybe not. Running backs do it, and in the NFL, and maybe that it's a little bit different in baseball, but he could beat those numbers as far as playing time, and he obviously has a lot more upside. Albies is a guy that's just seemed like he's been an every other year player, and that's because he gets hurt. He's had 30 home runs a couple times, and they really just don't have enough home runs projected for him, but enough there, with 14 steals and 23 home runs. It's a pretty good combo, but he realistically could steal. He's hurt last year. In the year before, he had some steals, but he's stolen over 20 bases in the past, and the change in rules, he hasn't had that opportunity. So I think that he's fairly priced. Riley's coming off a down year, but he's a 40 home run hitter. Olsen's a guy that didn't line up as well for home runs as you would think with because he had 50 something, I think, 2 years ago. So he might be a little light there. Something didn't line up the home run rate or the strikeout rate or something like that, but his batting average got a little bit of rebound. But he's a guy that definitely could hit for a lot more power, but a good lineup. In Ozuna really kind of took advantage of last year being in the lineup 162 games, really kind of a guy that's kind of been really a lot better last 2 years, and maybe he could be like a Nelson Cruz and have really good career in his 30s and stuff like that. But I got him 152 games because I figure Acuna might have to play some time at DH to kind of, unless they go willing to put Ozuna in the outfield. So Michael Harris has to work his way down the bottom. Really, same thing. He's like a 2020 player, but he needs a better opportunity to get those extra bats. Profar down the lineup. I think that roster resource had Profar up top, with that was with Acuna injured, but I think I think Harris should get the shot. Murphy played really well for Atlanta, but I don't know. It just looked at him really close, and like he could be a lot better and get hot. But I'd be willing to take him in the right price, but doesn't. He's not really a guy that I definitely think I should have to get. But Kelenic and Brian De La Cruz are kind of some guys with a little bit of experience, and Kelenic just can't get the strike zone. I really struggled. It took me a couple hours just to put this Miami roster together. A lot of guys that are just like journeyman, kind of been in the minors for a couple of years, or players thing. But I thought they did a decent job piecemealing of some guys as far as taking some walks and getting on base and having some potential. But the lineup's really messy. Edwards just stole so many bases. The batting averages is just insane. I have him at 291. He could hit. I think his career batting average is a lot higher than that. The Connor Norby lines up pretty good. Just needs a little more experience. So I think that he's fair in drafts because he could still, be a fit 2015 guy. And the middle lineup, I have no idea. In all of these players is, could be interchangeable, and they could sign somebody, and it's just, but I had to, I try to predict 9 at bats for every 162 games. So that number right there is what I'm looking at. I talked about the Alonso thing, and that's the same thing. And I'm going to just highlight this a second time. Is you got Soto 133 walks and Lindor 59, so that's 192 times. And then you got the number of hits over here. You get another 300 and something hits, and I know how many of these are going to be home runs in 270. But that's just such a massive number of players that are going to be on base in front of him. That gives a pretty good opportunity. So his RBI rate I have at 18%. We conceivably higher than that. I think it just the team really kind of lined up, and really the person that hits fourth in this lineup could be the value. I know Mark Vientos really came on and hit home runs last year. I don't know if he has enough experience to seize that. And he doesn't, he strikes out and he can kind of slow down the rally a little bit. But I think Nemo, he's a little nicked up and he's fallen in drafts. And he had like a 24-90, 24 home runs, 90 RBIs. Like he could actually be a lot better. But he could be a value because of that. And Winker's just extra player. Really like Alvarez. He had 25 home runs rookie season. I got him at 23. I think he's going to get better. You just look on him, 22-year-old. He did take walks in the minors. Just like there's a lot to like of that of there. And then what they're going to do with the other Acuna over here. And, is Jeff O'Neill done? And just, it's just not there. Jose Seri is going to play split time in outfield and good defender, strikes out too much and, doesn't get on first base enough to get, steal, he could steal a ton of bases. He just needs to be on a lot more. And Starlin Marte probably isn't going to go away. If he's showing he's a little bit healthy, he's a veteran guy and can do some stuff, and he doesn't have to be a key part of this lineup. But Phillies, Trey Turner going to bat leadoff. That's pretty good, because that gives him a chance to probably, instead of being behind Schwarber, blocking the base pass sometimes, where he can run a little bit more. And he's really been an underachiever in stolen bases in his career. You thought he would, especially in the rule changes. I think he was 30 for 30 2 years ago, which you think, oh, why wouldn't you run more? I'm really, Schwarber is what he's pretty much the home run hitter and strikeout, and brings in the batting average. Harper's been a really good player, but just never been that superstar stud and did it all season. But he's capable, but I don't know, it just seems like he's more steady than impactful. Like you think that like Wyatt Langford could be a better player than him. Like Wyatt Langford could be a first rounder next year, where I don't think Harper would be a first rounder. But I can't say Harper doesn't have the talent. I'm a Alex Baum, think he can improve, and the same thing with Bryson Stott. They've got enough playing time, and if they can get their in that home run thing down, their high contact batting average is high enough where in their approaches and stuff, they're just like they're players that could pop, but they hit that. Stott's going to hit down the lineup. Castellanos is steady. Real Muto on a bounce back. Getting older. I'm neutral on him. CJ Adams, talked about him. The young players for Washington were interesting because I got him at 247 and 242. Wood was a guy that was he struggled with the strikeouts a couple years ago or last year, not the year before in the minors, and it was higher, but he really kind of handled it well and showed some growth last year. And then when he got to the majors, he did really, really well. But does he have that little setback in his second year? I don't know there. So it's really, I think I went on the reverse of probably the public of his batting average came in lower. I think the home runs and steals will be there. Same thing with Cruz. When I did his player profile, I said like 265 with 80, 20, and 15, but I didn't, or something like that. But I didn't, it didn't line up as far as numbers, but it's where he's going to hit in the batting order, and the potential is there. I like both of the players, just not sure. Lowe and Bell in the lineup. Garcia's getting better. Keeper Reed's just kind of boring. The third base is like a coin flip between a couple players, and the bench is really not much there. But the young players, I think I wouldn't fight for Wood, but if somebody did, I can't, say no. But he just won't be in my team, Bills. And Cruz, I don't really know actually where he goes drafted. Nico Horner came in a lot better than expected as far as for me, as far as like he rated as the second person in the fantasy points gain score for second base. And I looked at it, I was like, why is this so high? I mean, a little bounce back in steals, only 10 home runs. But, the steals do really kind of impact a player's category. Tucker there is a really, really exciting player for the Cubs. Hap's been pretty steady. Suzuki's been a player, but he's just can't stay on the field enough. Can't give you that 155 games that, to see what it really can do, but he'll steal some bases, hit some home runs. Contact batting average tends to be really, really good. Michael Bush probably going to sit down against little lefties. What was it, Bush? I got that. There's some like triangle. Yeah. So the Justin Turner, is going to get some first base time, some third base time with Shaw. Shaw, I thought was liked him when I first did it, but he backed off a little bit, a little nicked up. So I think he's a tricky player for me to draft. Batting average came in lower, but I think the potential's there. He can steal bases, hit home runs. Will he come fast? Pete Crow Armstrong really did pretty good last year for when he was on the field. 15, I got a 15-24. I think that he falls in that range where Dominguez gets drafted, Armstrong gets wrong, and Josh Lowe's the third guy. And I just I think all of those kind of people are trying to get the speed from the outfield, and they make sense. But Armstrong, if he could move up in the batting order, and I'm just going to look at see it just quick here. The walk rate's around 7, strikeout rate was 25. So, his approach would have to improve a little bit, but not saying that he couldn't grab it for some part of the lineup. And then we get to the Reds. I'm going a little more deeper in depth in this than I probably should, but it's probably helpful if anybody's willing to go through this. But Friedel is a guy that's put up pretty good numbers, but he tends to miss time. Only gave him 127 games. Who knows who's going to flip with him? Ellie De La Cruz is really always this big complaint. People like, is he worth a first-round value? Well, he's a guy's going to hit more home runs. The exit velocity could be off the charts. He runs early and often. He did it last year. He's fast. He's willing to run. His start between walks and singles, like those numbers added together, he ran 50% of the time. I know he's stealing third base sometimes, but he's on first base. He's running a lot, and that's a really big number there. But the thing that really that separates him that people don't really kind of grasp is his contact batting average. Last year he hit 400, struck out 218 times, and if you can hit well over 400, I know the strikeout total is just like gets over, is a hang up for some people, but I shaved off 20 strikeouts for him and got a strikeout rate to like 29 something. And that's a young guy just getting better. And if he still struck out 198 times, that's a ton. But, his contact batting average over 400 would improve a little bit and his batting average go up. So I have him as a neutral hitter, and neutral to me is around 260 this year. So I got him beating that. So, but he still rated really, really well. McLean came out as the best second baseman, really playing off that short sample size. But, steals bases, it really, when I went through the projections, it really kind of sealed the deal that he's a really, really good player. The stuff lines up coming off an injury, but, I haven't drafted him, but, I think I got to be a little more aware of that. But there's a couple of them. Second base is a player willing to push back. And Christian Encarnacion-Strand burnt me last year. He got hurt. Really looked wrong at the plate. But when you look at this lineup, this guy hits for high contact batting average. Strikeout rate's a little bit high. I got him at 26.7. But he's the banger. He's the guy that can hit the home runs. So I gave him 139 games, 31 home runs, and I'm kind of bold there. But you know what? I liked him last year. I think he's a value. Could I be wrong? Yes, but I'm going to believe in the talent there. So Steer, balanced player, whatever. He does it all. And I think the first base and third base, maybe I have that position. I thought he was third base. Yeah, maybe he was first base and outfield, but because of Strand got hurt. But I think I got these position eligibilities. And the position eligibility, if somebody had 4 positions, I didn't give them the 4th. And if somebody has an outfielder as the 4th, I'm always going to give the advantage to the infielder. Candelario, just steady. Fraley, Gavin Lux, I don't know what to make of him there. And then Noel Marte, will he ever, kind of hit the ground running? And they got some extra guys in the outfield there. So the Brewers are going to run a lot. And I don't know if Jackson Chirios probably didn't come up as high as my projections as a thing, but he's a guy that definitely could steal more than 35 bases. I mean, a guy that 24 home runs, 35 bases, and that's pretty impressive. He handled himself well, did a lot of stuff. Just that the lineup just doesn't have enough power to kind of like, really kind of score that extra runs. Only 165 home runs, but so I think that's really a really good player. I'm fine with somebody starting with him. It's a building block. Middle of the lineup. Somebody saying Garrett Mitchell's a lack of experience, strikes out a lot. I think him is more of like a 20-30 guy potential if you can get that strikeout there, and it can overlap a little bit in the outfield and playing time in center field. And will he sit against lefties? Only gave him 121 games. I'm not draft. He doesn't get drafted in leagues, but I'm in the position that they haven't talked about Tyler Black, and he's seemed like he's the best skill set to hit in the miss lineup. But I'm just making them aware, and the projections don't jump off the page. Gave him 125 games, which is a lot, but still, at some point, still some bases for a corner infielder. And this is where it gets kind of tricky, is that for this to work the way I have the lineup, I need Frelick to play a little bit of third base, and I also need him maybe to roll into second base sometimes, which I think they're going to give a little spring training. I'm more confident that he could see some time at third, maybe not stealing away from Ortiz, but Ortiz could play shortstop or even go to second base. He's a pretty good defensive player. But the Durbin guy, I just don't think he's that as people are attracted to. I'm just not sure there. So it's a little messy at that little triangle of playing time because they got outfielders. But Frelick added some bulk there. He could run a little bit. Maybe help him a little bit in the home runs. But I think that I liked him last year as potentially as the Horner guy from Chicago, a comparable player that I thought he had a little more home runs potential, but a lot more higher upside in batting average. And I only have Frelick for 280, and I think he could hit for a lot higher average. So, but I think they're going to have to get him in lineup. But a lot of these guys are, not playing 140 games or something. Pittsburgh lineup was really messy. Family signed him, but I guess it makes sense to put him up top. Brian Hayes, probably buried in lines in a draft champion type format. I think that you can throw him on a roster, and he kind of makes sense, because he does have underlying speed that he didn't run, and he does kind of hit the ball hard. Just another guy can't stay on the field, and I gave him 141 games, so I was pretty good respect. I think McCutchen just looks like, I don't know. I put him in a cleanup spot because of experience, but when I looked at it, I was like, this guy's, he's going the wrong direction. I mean, he's been a long career, great player, had him in his prime and did stuff, but I think he gets eased out of that. And O'Neill Cruz, he's getting better. I guess just my projections just don't line up for a lot of the stuff for him. But I mean, he definitely could pop with the power, and he just gets that strikeout under control. Still, that's the main thing is strikeout rate. I got it over 30%. So if he can get that down, he's going to get more more balls in play. Hit for batting average, his contact batting average. He's so in compared to Dela Cruz, he's 373. So he's not really, he can't offset as much as Dela Cruz. That percentage point. In people that play in deep leagues, I mean, I think somebody, if they want to cheat the catcher position, they can draft all three Pittsburgh catchers in a draft champions, and I think they'll get a winning combination of those players at the catcher two position. And the ranges are pretty, I think Bart's the first one, maybe 260, Rodriguez around 500, and Davis is like a lot later than that. But Davis, he's a guy that's first overall pick. So but I think Rodriguez is going to end up batting in the middle of this lineup. He is a guy that's going to probably most likely shift to first base and get more playing time. So I have both of those guys in the lineup. Bart's the guy that could hit his way out of the lineup. So I gave Bart the least. I know he's did really well, and the power is there. So it's kind of messy there for me, and it looks kind of strange, but that's my feeling on that. The rest of Nick York could improve. He's still kind of a young guy. I got him from the Red Sox, but second base, and the Horowitz guy isn't a first baseman. If he played second, that would be fine. Mason Wynn jumping to the top of the lineup, said he was going to run more. His projections came out pretty good. I've looked at him a couple times in draft. I'd be interested in him. It's like 3 or 4 guys in that middle infield, second base that are interesting to me. that could be helpful, because they probably were guys that maybe were 8th round picks last year, and they're going in like the 13th round in 15-team drafts. So that's pretty interesting to me. Alec Burleson, really liked improvement that he had last year. Needs a little more at bats against lefties. I gave him a pretty good respect there. Get a few steals, but I think he just doesn't strike out, gets on base, could improve and be a lot better. Wilson Contreras gets the bump from playing first base, could get some time at DH, and hitting a favorable part of the lineup. But I didn't give him like his brother, like 155 games, because he seemed like he missed his times and stuff like that. So could be a lot more. Is he a steal? If a catcher playing first base, I always like that kind of when they not playing the position. So there's a lot to like there for a catcher, but we'll see. Nolan Arenado, I think seems like he wants to get out of this town. Just isn't the same player he was in Colorado. I wish he would have stayed there instead of Chris Bryant. Probably would have had a great career, Hall of Famer. But he's just giving away a lot. But he's just a steady guy, and he's a proven player, veteran bat, doesn't strike out a lot. You move him to a different, different ballpark and whatever, he might get a little more life in him. Gorman's a guy with a lot of home runs, potential, probably sit against righties, qualify at second base. So it's a big power guy if he is playing well, and maybe you catch a streak out of him as a replacement guy, or you watch him on the waiver wire in shallow leagues. Jordan Walker really struggled. I think they just tried to change his swing. So I think he's going to go be a little more line drive thing, 2010, type 2015 type of player. We'll see. I haven't seen any more reports on him, but new bars there. Ivan Herrera, I really like his contact batting average came out really good. Approach came out good. He's 24 years old, could improve, could steal some bases for a catcher. So I think that he's a guy at catcher too. He's kind of interesting. He's going to give up some time to the other catcher there, but I think that Herrera, the sum of his parts, probably don't look like they're really that great right now. But I think they're it's going to be a winning bet if you get them at the right price in deep formats at the catcher two position. Carroll's just rates like top shelf, like gets on base, gonna hit home runs. Just he was the 5th highest hitter when I did it, and so a lot of these things, I mean, he could beat expectations. So I think advantage over him with De La Cruz is the batting average. Like even though Carroll's like 280 and De La Cruz 271. Carroll's a guy that could, hit 327, and if he hits 327, how many more chances there? Is walk rates going up? There's a lot to like there. Just the only thing I think is the background is a little injury news, history in the past. Not news, but in the past, could it flare up? It's not anything standing, in the foreground right now. Marte had the big year last year in the power. Well, is it repeatable? Is the home run rate was just so far off the chart? There will be some regression there. He's missed some time there. So only had him 139 games. If he played 155, he would get a few more home runs there. Josh Naylor was pretty good at Cleveland last year, showed some improvement in power, but a guy that doesn't really have a lot of seasons with 500 bats, but pretty good situation there. Gurriel is going to sit a little bit. Always think he should have been a better player, did some stuff, but he's steady, going to sit some time, frustrate you. Suarez swing and miss guy. He really, he hit his way out of it last year. Will it happen again this year? And I was really surprised. I mean, they signed Geraldo Perdomo for like $11 million a year, and that's a pretty good stamp that he has talent and upside. And we'll see when you have Jordan Lawler that's going to be playing shortstop. And I don't know, maybe one of them is going to play third base. So that's something to watch. So Lawler is a guy I think that has a lot of potential, but didn't really give him enough games. I felt like I should give him more, but the Perdomo guy, where they paid him, I thought he would have to get in the lineup. I really like the direction of Pavin Smith. I can't say that he's, I think he could be a platoon guy against right-hand pitching. But he just looks like his approach is there, gotten better, strikeouts. It's just a lot to like for that type of player in a deep format, and it really doesn't shine in his home run total, like 16, 62, but that's a pretty good player if he ever could get, play against lefties too. But they have just the same thing on the outfield. They got those, McCarthy and Thomas, and there's some overlap. Grishik's going to be a split. It's just, but they're all, decent players, and Thomas and McCarthy could be a lot better too. So, but I think there's just some interesting length to this lineup, and they scored a lot of runs last year. But and they're going to steal some bases too. Colorado was messy too. I mean, Chris Bryant, I feel even wrong giving him 119 games. Doyle moved up, just lack of option. Tovar strikes out so much, but you got to put somebody in there. Nolan Jones, last year's was a bum, but this year they give him to his walk rate's there and stuff like that. So I think he's a pretty fair value. I listed the guy Toglia, I don't even know, Michael Toglia. I don't know. His RBI rate's going to be low. He's going to hit home runs. The strikeout's going to be 32%. I mean, I know I heard on one podcast somebody's talk about Hunter Goodman stealing playing time at catcher, but you know what? I think Hunter Goodman's a better player than him, and he could play first base. But back in the lineup, seeing transition is just, I don't know. It's just really kind of a messy lineup to deal with and get invested. So I'm really Jones. I'd be interested in where he goes. Doyle, obviously. Tovar, definitely showed the power, but he was really helped by getting so many plate appearances last year, and just their Dodgers, they are what they are, really great team. But I can say this, when I was looking at the Dodgers, I was like, you know what? If Ohtani got hurt and Freeman has any setback, that lineup's not special. But the advantage of them is they have the great, the great pitching staff. So, but Edmonds, I think, is decent value. Kim, I think, is gonna. They said maybe starting the minors, didn't give him the whole thing there. So, overall, that Hernandez didn't give him as many home runs as last year, but even Pages. So there's not really everybody kind of knows the Dodgers. And Ohtani didn't. I gave Ohtani 115 runs, 43 home runs. He's batting leadoff, 102 RBIs, pretty big number for a leadoff guy. 29 steals. I just gave him less running because he's pitching. So like a really great season when you look at it, but then you look at it like, oh, he's not. He should be better. But he could beat those numbers. He's a guy like when I'm calling Dela Cruz, his contact balance same as saying 409. But his strikeout rate's 24%, and you can see the difference in batting average there. But Freeman, same thing I talked about, the missing 10 games. Padres, the veteran, the top 5 or 6 spots are pretty good there, and everybody kind of knows the players. I don't know if Merrill gave him 24 steals. I think Tatis, they might have those two flip-flop, and I'm not sure how that goes. Machado makes sense as a cleanup. Bogart's a little more experienced, so I put him in. Hitting 5th. He really hasn't been the same player as he was 3 or 4 years ago with the Red Sox. Could he rebound? I'm not sure. Don't have him, I think you're getting 85 cents on the dollar of what he once was, but that still could be a decent player compared to where he gets drafted. And he should be in the lineup a lot. And I know he's missed some time in the last couple of years. I'm not the Elias Diaz as the starting catcher, and I'll take the Campusano guy. I just think he's a better, younger guy with more upside. The power could be better. The Diaz guy had a few home runs, gets out of Colorado. There's just nothing there. Back lineups on this thing is really nothing special. I guess Rosario is a guy that could emerge, and he really was a 2020 player in the minors, and I kind of have him rated kind of low here, but he could actually emerge there. And I'm not sure what they're going to do with. Is Hayward going to play or the other DH? And the same thing with the Giants. And this has got a lot longer than I thought. But anyways, Giants, they signed a big contract, Willie Adames. I don't think he's going to run anymore. And just for a quick example, I even looked it up when I did it. I got him stealing 5 bases. He stole 21. Last year, San Francisco stole 68 bases. Milwaukee stole like 218. You think they're going to run? You think he's going to steal? I think I even looked at somebody's projections for him, and they all had him for like 13, 14 steals. I was like, I'm not seeing it, sorry. And then Chapman's guy, the same thing. He stole bases last year and was out of line. But maybe, Fitzgerald's a guy that strikes out a lot. Had a pretty good year, 2020 type player, a little nicked up with the back thing, but I think he's fine. Wade's nothing. Yastrzemski, nothing. Bailey's a pretty talented defensive player. Matos, I like him as a player. I think that he's undervalued. Lee just doesn't do enough, and not sure that he's got the power and stuff. The Ramos guy, I think he's got a little nicked up too. He just got something in spring training, but I think he's him repeatable. I mean, the batting average won't be there, but I think there's enough there. in the back end of the lineup. So I mean, that's kind of a just quick walkthrough, but some of the players and whatever. But projections are what they are, where they line up, and basically, it's a tool to look at and get a feel for what a player's value. And when you look at it, I'm doing the projections. I agree with it. I don't agree with it. Same thing. I look at a player and I'm like, okay, I like that guy, even though like the Pavin Smith guy, like I projected him for that, but I think that guy could be a lot better player than that. But not means I'm going to draft him, but I'm going to be aware on the waiver wire that like if he's getting more playing time, I might, and I like that he's like a first baseman, but he actually qualifies in the outfield, which is kind of a, where you could be looking for some players to fill in. So I think he makes sense. And like I said, in the 15-team league, but just like stuff like that, you pay attention to, and who do you believe, don't you believe? And I'm not going to have all the answers. I'm going to get some right, and even the batting orders I'm going to have off. And it's just, but you put a lot of time into this, and you make your best evaluations, and a lot of people that you play against do the same thing, and they're going to steal some players. But who's the most important to you when you draft? And so I just want to go walk through this thing because I'm going to release these in a few when I get upstairs, and I sorted them and stuff like that. But that's what I'm in. So next I'm going to get into the pitching, and we'll see what there. And that's my batting thing. This format is really, really good. I think it just kind of like, rather than sticking a bunch of projections and you're looking at them player by player, you can see them in the lineup. They're connected by RBI rate and their skill set. The run rate, obviously is adjustable, and that if a guy's like, you put Kyle Crawford in front of some other team, that RBI rate is going to go higher for the guy. And if you same thing in the reverse, if you got, put like Ohtani in front of a guy that was that had a lower run rate and he was a leadoff guy with Ohtani hitting behind him, he's going to score more. So that, that's the concept there. But just get a feel for it. But I think the look's better. And thanks for listening. If somebody ever makes it to the end of this video, but that's all we got today, and we're going to work on the pitching. Obviously, I think it's going to take me 3 days, but I got to be out of the house tomorrow, and hopefully I can get this mouse over here so I can do this. So yeah, but I got so hopefully Monday sometime, and then I can get back and finish the players, and I'll go to Vegas in a couple of weeks and hopefully win some money. Good luck, everybody.